You ever have one of those moments where you realize you're not just dealing with a nosy neighborry up against a full-blown suburban dictator? Yeah, that's exactly what I found myself tangled in when the HOA decided my wooden privacy fence was too visually aggressive. Their words, not mine. But this wasn't about aesthetics. This was about control. And the queen of that control? A woman named Marilyn Burke. Or, as we came to call her, Mirror Marilyn. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. One sunny Tuesday morning, I came home from a grocery run to find an envelope taped to my door. Inside, a printed notice with official HOA letterhead and that lovely little red ink signature Marilyn loved so much. The letter stated that my fence violated Section 4.3.2.1b of the HOA code and that it had to be removed within 14 days or I'd face a $500 fine. I squinted at the clause. It didn't even make sense. Something about the fence disrupting neighborhood tranquility. It was a cedar fence, not a death ray. I knew right then this wasn't about cedar. It was about Marilyn again. The same woman who once fined our neighbors for hanging up wind chimes because they disrupted her meditation. The same one who got our community fire pit shut down because smoke drifted into her lavender bushes. I didn't respond right away, mostly out of disbelief. But then, I saw her outside the next day, clipboard in hand, standing near my lawn like she was staging a crime scene. I waved. She didn't wave back. So, I went to the HOA rulebook. I read all 62 pages of it. Seriously, and nowhere did it mention anything about natural wood fencing being prohibited. But you know what else it didn't mention? Mirror finishes. That's when the idea hit me. If she wanted to play HOA games, I'd play HOA chess. I went down to the hardware store, picked up reflective panels, and started building what would soon become the most infamous structure in our neighborhood, the mirror fence. 3 days later, it was up. Clean, gleaming, and technically compliant. From her porch, all Marilyn could see was her own reflection over and over, staring back at her from every angle. It wasn't long before she noticed. One morning, I saw her standing on her driveway, arms crossed, face twitching. She walked right up to it, glared, and then did something I'll never forget. She pulled out a measuring tape like she was about to arrest the fence. A day later, a second notice appeared, this time accusing me of violating a reflection clause. A what? She'd made it up. Literally typed out a fake subsection and attached 12 signatures from neighbors, 2 of whom I knew were out of state that week. She even used a faux HOA seal that looked suspiciously like a clip-art handshake. Then came the theatrics. Marilyn began hosting impromptu HOA meetings on her lawn, passing out lemon water, and talking about the psychological dangers of reflective landscaping. She made a TikTok where she fake cried in front of my fence, claiming it was giving her migraines. It got 34 views, one of them was mine. Then she put up a laminated sign near my mailbox that said, "This home is under investigation for weaponized reflection." UPS drivers started calling me Mirror Man. I didn't mind. But I wasn't laughing when I found out the real reason behind all this. Marilyn wasn't just picky, she was strategic. Turns out, she owned a consulting business called Suburban Harmony, LLC, which specialized in neighborhood revitalization. Translation, she was flipping houses. And the ones she targeted? Homes she herself had cited into submission. She'd buy low, sell high, and move on. I started digging into property records. She had ownership stakes in 5 homes on our block alone. I brought all this to Rachel, the only board member who still wore Crocs to meetings and didn't treat the HOA like a war council. We held a secret meeting behind Greg's trampoline. Yes, that's a thing where we put the pieces together. Fake rules, fake clauses, forced sales. It was a scam wrapped in shrubbery. So we fought back, not with drama, but with documentation. I compiled every letter, every flyer, every suspicious clause Marilyn had ever weaponized. We filed an ethics complaint to the city. Meanwhile, I installed a second mirror panel angled to reflect her prized tulip garden. Not out of spite, just poetic symmetry. When the city council finally held a hearing, Marilyn showed up like she was walking onto a reality show set, rhinestone clipboard and all. She tried to declare the meeting invalid. But Rachel calmly presented our evidence. One by one, the forged signatures, the shady LLC filings, the fake citations. When we showed the metadata proving she'd typed up a clause on optical aggression at 2:12 a.m. on her personal laptop, even her best friend Judith looked away. The HOA voted to suspend her presidency. The city opened an investigation. Her empire? It crumbled. She tried to save face by starting a blog reflections with Maryland.com. First post was titled, "How HOA Tyranny Silenced a Visionary." Comments were disabled within 12 hours. A month later, she moved out. Quietly. At dawn, a for sale sign popped up, and by sunset, she was gone. I heard she tried to start a new HOA in a neighboring town. It lasted 2 weeks. Now, we've got a new handbook 3 pages long. Plain English. One clause says, "Don't weaponize your clipboard." And my mirror fence? Still standing. Still sparkling. So tell me, have you ever faced an HOA tyrant? A neighbor who thinks they were elected emperor of your street? Let me know in the comments. Because when it comes to suburban warfare, sometimes the most powerful weapon is just a good, clean reflection. They say every good fence makes for good neighbors, but I guess no one told Darla Jennings that. See, when the dust finally settled and Karen left town, we all breathed easier, slept deeper, and laughed a little louder. But life in a neighborhood is never truly quiet for long, especially when someone new shows up with a clipboard and a suspicious smile. Darla bought Karen's house 6 months after the final lawsuit wrapped. She was polite at first, real estate agent, freshly divorced, drove a pearl white Lexus, and wore those oversized sunglasses that made her look like she was always mid-red carpet. She told us she believed in beauty, order, and a touch of aesthetic discipline. That should have been our first red flag. By the second HOA meeting, Darla had proposed a new motion, reviewing reflective materials for emotional tone. We all groaned. Cheryl, who was now HOA chair and officially allergic to nonsense, calmly declined. Rachel made margaritas. We thought we'd nipped it in the bud. But Darla had the persistence of a squirrel and the charm of a traffic ticket. Soon came the letters. Not from the HOA but from her personal stationery. Monogrammed. Complaining about Greg's inflatable goose again. About the wind chimes again. She even tried to suggest that my solar-lit mirror fence was attracting energy vampires. I nearly fell off my porch laughing. But here's the thing. We weren't the same neighborhood we were under Karen. We'd seen the playbook. We'd lived the movie. And we weren't about to let the sequel happen without a fight. Greg responded by adding a second goose, this time wearing a cape. The gnome lady dressed her crew in miniature hard hats and staged a gnome-themed construction protest. Cheryl, God bless her, sent Darla an official HOA letter stating, "Our bylaws do not recognize vibes as grounds for complaints." The final straw came when Darla posted on Nextdoor accusing Greg's trampoline of causing oral vertigo and suggesting it be limited to alternate Saturdays. The post backfired. It was screenshotted, memed, and turned into a neighborhood t-shirt that said, "Oral vertigo survivor." And just like that, Darla faded, not dramatically like Karen, but quietly, like a bad idea you forget mid-sentence. She stopped coming to meetings. She stopped waving. And one morning, her Lexus was gone. Her house went up for sale a week later, with the listing reading, "Serene suburban retreat surrounded by unique personalities and strong community identity." That's real estate code for they band together and won't tolerate nonsense. We all chipped in and bought a bench for the butterfly garden, the one named after Karen. We added a plaque that read, "In memory of those who tried to beautify us into submission." And my fence? Still standing. Still mirrored. Still shining in the morning sun like a warning and a welcome. A reflection of who we are now, flawed, funny, fiercely independent. The kind of neighborhood where if you try to start a war over aesthetics, you'll be met with disco lights, lawn gnomes, and an inflatable goose in aviators. So yeah, they say fences divide people. But ours? Ours reflects back exactly who we are. And maybe, just maybe, that's why it works. Now tell me in the comments, what would your mirrored fence reflect? The drama? The defiance? Or just the sheer joy of living free from HOA tyranny? Because whether it's wind chimes or tulips or goose capes, we all deserve to live where common sense trumps clipboard power. Hit that like button, subscribe for more unbelievable HOA stories, and until next time, keep your fences strong, your lights solar-powered, and your community louder than your critics.